Pubic symphysis. Or we just thought we just started off naming body parts.
SOS. Is it SOS or SOAS?
It depends on where you come
So
from.
as
And if you're an asshole, it's so's if you're an asshole.
We'll let Lon Kilgore know that when he comes on the show. Did you guys take that A&P course when it was offered to us like 5-6 years ago?
Yeah, a long time
took
ago.
half.
Yep.
And all of a sudden during the GHD lecture, everyone was saying SOS all of a sudden because that's how Lon was saying it in the A&P course. Real quick introduction of this guy, in case you live under a rock. Andrew Charlesworth, CFL3, CrossFit Midwest affiliate account representative. Fancy way of saying he
Seminar
runs
staff.
shit in the Midwest.
Seminar staff.
Owner of
Affiliate owner.
to Abor, husband to a phenomenal woman, father to 2 boys, former. Were you Division 1 basketball player?
Division 2 basketball player. Fern is technically Division 1. He's probably going to bring that up at some point.
I was not going to bring that up. I was not going to bring that up, but I was going to bring up, I know you're an MJ guy, so how do you feel about LeBron taking the scoring title all time?
Did you, I actually posted it the other day. You watched, obviously, The Last Dance, Fern. You had to have.
I watched The Last Dance.
It's one of the greatest documentaries of all time.
I sat up. I worked a seminar this weekend. I sat up and watched like a tweet of Jordan where like they play that music in the end. And he says like, if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. I literally just watched that and I'm over and over. And I'm like, what has happened to the game? I can't put anything in today's game in context of the Jordans. You know, I feel no emotion behind that whatsoever.
I didn't think that you would. I was curious. But yeah. I think that's how anybody that has nostalgia about like when you grew up in one era and then there's a new era of something. Probably CrossFit's no different. You know, we will have the Fronings and the Frasers. Like there will be multiple eras of
fit. and it's kind of like a real sport, wrestling. Like a lot of people, you know, will tell you John Cena best wrestler, but we all know it's Randy Macho Man Savage
or Hulk Hogan. If you're really trying to be serious about this.
I'm with Joby. You got to go with Jordan over LeBron. But who would right now? Fern, Charlesworth, 1-on-1.
Speaking, hold on, real quick. I just got a package.
Pair of Jordans.
I wish. I have really tiny feet.
What did you get? What is in that square box?
It's you know who's when Tanya? She's like, I'm sending you guys Tanya and Joby.
Oh, Tanya. I thought that was private. I thought that was just me. Fern got a box too.
It literally just got dropped off just now.
Sending me all these nice messages. You sent them to you too.
Shout out CrossFit Morales. Yeah.
You didn't make it on her post-it note at home though, did you?
No, I made I'm in a framed picture above the headboard of their bed.
I don't think that's true. BJ Armstrong, I know that guy, Corey. Can you name the starting 5? It was Jordan, Pippen, Cartwright, BJ Armstrong, and then a white dude.
Luke Longley, like what?
Luke Longley. Yeah. Well, it depends. Yeah. They did win 6 rings, so.
I like Stockton Malone. Stockton was my dude, and of course Muggsy Bogues. But so who wins? Who wins 1-on-1?
It's too hard of a question, right? Like we play completely different roles.
One of you is better than the other.
1-on-1 doesn't mean you're a better basketball player. It doesn't.
Look, is Cody actually pulling his hair out right now, Fern? Is that Cody pulling his hair out? Or
it's like this show is screwed right now.
I mean, I don't know a lot about basketball. I'm going simply off height.
That's an overstatement. You don't know anything about basketball.
You're probably so bad at basketball, Jay. Like you are probably wrestlers are notoriously the worst basketball players.
I have brought this up on previous shows. I have literally brought this up.
We do real man things. We don't just shoot balls at a circle. We try to hurt each other, you know. But anyway, because I see Andrew dribbling down, posting up, big guy. You're gonna do like one of these, like a. Remember who did that one? Magic.
You were like a swing man, right? You're like a 2-3.
Yeah, I played the 4 and 3. Okay, so I played 3-4.
Okay,
which is like
what have numbers have to do?
There's a lot of height there, like that.
And by the way, this is all a segue to anatomy, because we're talking anatomy and physiology today.
Then you take that over, because what segue are you speaking of?
We were talking height. We were talking femur lengths, torso. Somebody said to me the other day, "You have a long torso." I was like,
"No,
that's
I want to bring
literally
that up.
the first time I've ever heard that."
Last level 2 I worked, and I don't know if you guys feel the same way. You could definitely call me out on this, but where we talk about like, okay, maybe somebody does have a long torso or they have a short torso, long femur, that's going to change their movements, their setups, etc. I agree, but typically we put those people in a camp of tall versus short, which is very untrue. The only reason I was ever any sort of competitive in CrossFit is because at my height, I have normal to even small person levers, whereas you can have long person levers and be short. Even
Austin Malleolo, for example, he could deadlift 7,000 pounds, but his snatch like 245, still a great snatch, by the way, but relative to his other lifts. And I agree with you, Andrew. A lot of times in the deadlift breakout group, it's not that you're tall or short. It's always that your either torso is long or your femur or your legs are long, right? If you have normal proportions, you look normal in your setup position. It's when you have either a short torso or long legs. And I always say like, hey, this setup looks a little different than we're used to, but check it. Shoulders above the bar, shoulders above the hips, hips above the knees, knees above the ankles, right? Like those don't change. How that looks may change a little bit.
Before we get into that, real quick, so just general overview, we're going to talk AMP for dummies, which all three of us on this call definitely qualify. Yep. And so, Andrew, how long have you had your affiliate? Like 7 years?
2015. So that would be 8 years.
Almost 8 years. Yeah. Okay. So almost 8 years.
Great affiliate, great programming done by Mrs. Charlesworth.
Killer logo.
Badass logo. It's on his leg. He's got a tattoo of his logo.
You do.
I'm not putting that logo on my leg. But I appreciate your dedication to that. So real quick. So obviously you own your affiliate. How many do you have? Not that it matters. How many seminars? Like 100 to 200 ish.
I'm over 200. Definitely. Over 200.
So over 200, right? So no shortage there. Obviously, you and a bit of a training nerd with regard to just movement in general, and then different things like bodybuilding too. So you like to nerd out on the stuff.
I like to nerd out on absolutely everything.
Can you block Corey Leonard on YouTube, please?
Corey Leonard, actually, and we're going to go the reverse order, Corey. We are going to donate $5 to you for that comment. So when it comes to AMP, anatomy and physiology, the technical jargon of coaching, let's start off with a broad overview of this, because here's what I think we should talk about. Like, how much of that do I need to know? How much of it should be communicated? How important is it? Like, do I need to go buy an AMP book? Do I need to know insertion? Do I need what is the point?
I would love.
Here's the deal. Just give me the facts.
Wow. Okay, that was pretty good.
He's good. He's good, Cody.
That was pretty. Before Ackerman takes that one over,
I don't have an answer for it.
I was an ex-phys major in college, and I had a super senior year post basketball. So I remember not caring so hard about my finals that I would actually bring in the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, the level 1 manual. This was in 2010. And I would say, hey, why is this stuff important? Look at these pages, even referring to the AMP for Jocks, because I'm like, movements about the spine. There's the spine. Here's the pelvis. Here's the femur. I'm looking at natural movements. What else do I really need to know? What's so important about the agonist antagonist? Now we know it is important, when you really dive into those rabbit holes, but for most trainers, this is all you need. You guys could disagree, but it's all right here. If you can understand, if you can draw, if you can see frontal planes, if you can understand why a bar over your head, the torso going forward would be incorrect, all those sorts of things, I love it. I think this is one of my favorite, this is one of my favorite FUs to the more complicated world.
Are you opening your present right now, Fern, by the way?
Oh yeah, I wanted to see what was in there.
What did you get?
I have FOMO.
Is there candy?
Yeah, these for sure. These are, I don't know if these are paleo, but they're definitely chocolate chip chocolate.
Andrew, this is one of our clients in Texas.
Sends cookies.
Very, very nice. Yeah, but they're probably protein cookies, just for the record.
Paleo. It's all good.
Yeah, they're paleo. those guys definitely.
This is Tanya and Joby, CrossFit Virilis.
Caveman definitely had.
Oh, nutrition. That's a sweet shirt. I can't wait to get mine.
That is a sweet shirt.
Cool
Yep.
shirt.
Yeah, and the logo's on the back. Shout out team. Cool. Thank you guys. No, I think but you actually took A&P courses, right? And you would have had to, and as exercise. Yeah. So did you take 1 and 2, or did you have to take 1? I would assume you have to take 1 and 2.
No,
I did take 1 and 2.
It's your major.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. We had to take them with the nurses at school too, and that was a huge weeder class for them to get out, and so it was terrible. Anatomy and phys was absolutely terrible.
That's like organic chemistry for pre-med, right? It was like
I took organic chemistry.
Well, organic chemistry that is a terrible class. I had to take that. But A&P does have some. I don't want to undervalue it. Like it at least valuable. Like I can take that information and I could somehow like create reference points as a trainer to make myself more knowledgeable, right? Like I remember taking both of those classes. I took them post grad as well. But I will tell you, I've never said any of those things in a class. I've never coached anybody in those and with any of that information. I have found it, this is me personally, I have found it to be useful to understand where my swim lane ends and somebody else's begins. And that's where I think it's most valuable, right? It's just like understanding the mechanics of movement and understanding like that's probably some sort of, I don't know, call it bony blockage or significant impairment that I am not qualified or capable of dealing with at this point. And the difference between understanding, okay, how should these body parts work together? How should they be moving? And then is that a position thing? Or is that literally an anatomy problem that we have standing in front of us right now? That's where I think it's valuable. And outside of that, you should know it, but it's not something you use every day on the floor. I don't know how else to say that.
I would put it along the lines of saying things like midline stabilization, posterior chain engagement. Like you need to know that. However, you should not be talking about it. What photo what photo we got here for? Cody?
Oh yes, dude. So Jimmy Letchford sent me this last night. Pull this up.
Oh
Cody.
No!
Since we're talking about basketball.
Oh my goodness!
Oh,
check this out.
This is you right in the middle, isn't it? With the jersey on.
In the middle. Yeah, I basically look like the only guy that didn't play in that game because I'm still
like, hey, bring in the water guy. Bring in the water guy. Let him be. Let him in the picture. What is this? What have you won? What have you won here?
This is immediately following. This is my freshman year, actually. So this is immediately following at the Army-Navy game where we beat Army.
So what is that trophy that dude's?
So it's kind of like the Commander-in-Chief's trophy, but for basketball. The football one's different. But I literally got that last night. So I was on a group text where that came through last night.
Every year, whoever wins this game gets one of those.
So in the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is like in football, so it's Army, Navy, and then Air Force. But then in basketball, it's just the Army Navy game. So like that's a big one every year. It's like the most important game of the year. But that's immediately following that game.
How of the 4 years you played, how many times did you win the Army Navy game?
3.
3 of the 4.
Nice.
Did you play in this game? Because it doesn't look like you played, though.
To be very candid with you, the likelihood of me playing in that game is probably low. I believe I'm the only freshman in this picture, but I might have. I don't remember, honestly. The only way I would have made it in that game is if we were winning by a good bit, and then they're just like trying to get guys on the floor. So they have you wear a sweater at school, or you get it's like a Letterman jacket, but it's a sweater. And if you play in the game where you beat Army, then you get a star. Then you get a star. So just for reference, that guy right there, 34, like the guy holding the trophy, he's like 6'11". He's now a pediatrician, I believe.
Nice.
Super smart dude.
Doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Cunningham.
Meanwhile, you're a CrossFit coach. That's great.
We're both in the health and fitness spaces.
Don't make me tell the Draymond Green story.
But I ran into him in the hospital one day. He's literally 6'11", and he was just lumbering down when we were taking Logan to a pediatrician appointment or something like that. And I was like, "Cun!" I was like, "He's like the biggest dude in the hospital, dude. He's enormous, a redhead.
6'11" is.
Yeah, he's like a 14 shoe. It's wild.
I would imagine being tall is harder than being short.
Yeah, it's pain. I mean, I'm not.
I'm neither. I have no idea.
I'm tall,
normal,
fairly tall, and it's still like it hurts.
Every time you travel, you post pictures and your knees are like hitting the seat in front of you, Andrew. And I'm like laying down, sprawled out. So
every time I like get annoyed about something, I instantly do think of you, Ackerman. I think like, what would you like? You posted something the other day. You're like, I'm up early, taking a cold bath.
I was.
It's 7 a.m. I'm like, dude, you have no idea how many things I've already done before you've remotely even sniffed of getting up. Like
Andrew reminds me that with baby number 2 coming, I'm in trouble. So let's bring it back to this. Do either of you talk any bit A&P in your on-ramp? Well, let me ask you, do you have an on-ramp, Andrew?
Okay. You asked me, I'm going to tell you the answer. No.
So, thank you. That is how the show works.
There's a lot of different models, right?
Yeah, I think that's great.
Choose the model that works for me. It doesn't mean I don't recommend that to affiliates. I get 4 to 5 conversations a day with affiliates. And I ask them, like, whatever works for you is going to work. This is what I do, but it does not mean that it's going to make you the most money. It does not mean it's going to make your clients the best movers. Like, figure out what you're good at and do it.
There is no one size fits all there. There's so many variables that go into designing that. But
I like what you did, Fern, the other day. I think you posted, you guys are doing the weeds here, so we can ring it back in, but you posted something, Fern, that was so fucking good.
That's rare.
No, it was, man, you did. Oh, it's come back to me. So it was about an on-ramp ish, I think. And you said like all the stuff's in the weeds of what this session looks like. You might have somebody coming in for an on-ramp and you might spend time talking to them about their emotions, their eating habits, their whatever. Like the last thing you're going to do is read off a script and be like, okay, I'm going to teach you the squat today.
Yeah.
And like, I love that so much because that brings so much value to that client. They're going to be with you. They're going to remember that forever. Even if they don't touch, we don't have to call it a no sweat intro. We can just call it a meeting with Fern for his gym and whatever.
Which I'm taking appointments.
You are?
Yeah, taking appointments. Yeah.
There you go.
My calendar's open.
Awesome. I love that. I wish I could have like reshared it, but I don't have a repost.
You do.
I don't have one.
Everybody has one. But no, so no, I don't either. We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it either.
People making fun of me in the chat. You see this, Cody?
It's a new sport.
Nick,
this is a sport. This is a sport that's below basketball and above wrestling.
I expect this of Corey, Nick. I thought better of. You know, I thought we were friends. I thought all this coaches development we've been doing meant something. Now I see it's all for nothing.
But no, we don't talk really anything in there with the extent of addressing injuries and then the basic mechanics of good movement. But that's it.
Do you do what you said? Did you do that? Do you do that at your gym, Fern? Do you actually have like an offer for a intro meet with a coach session that the client can pay for, or is that?
I mean, my current setup is we run many variations of this. The current is somebody reaches out to us, we schedule a consult with them. They come in, and that consult there's no training in it. It's usually booked for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Series of questions, figure out what they want to do. And then from there we book into their like accelerator package, which is like their personal training sessions, their nutrition consult, all that kind of stuff. And then move from there. That's the way we currently run it. We've run all sorts of other stuff, but that we just happen to be able to facilitate that right now.
By the way, if anyone wants to learn more about the accelerator package that Fern offers at CrossFit Rife, go to Monday's episode. We broke down your front end offer.
Yeah, like how to build a front end offer.
Yeah. Let's talk about question number 2 that Cody shot us. And I was just having a conversation about this yesterday, Fern, in our coaches development group, because we were going over the 9 foundational movements. We were talking points of performance and faults. And there's often confusion between muted hip and lack of hip extension. So I'm interested in hearing, Andrew, you are our guest. How do you describe the difference? What is the difference for those listening? Let's break it down so anyone watching now knows the difference between muted hip and lack of hip extension.
All right. So the thing about muted hip, you're talking practical application of what movement? Are we talking the jerk or catching it in the clean?
Well, it typically happens in one of 2 movements, right? The push press or the receiving position of the clean, like you just said.
Yeah. Okay. You just repeated what I just said. So do you want me to talk about practical application of in a push press or in catching it in a clean?
You pick.
I don't know what to do.
I think it's more problematic. So in another world, I used to be a kettlebell sport guy, and a lot of people.
You have a couple world records.
Yes, I do. Just one, not a couple. But
One.
they're big on you actually rest in what CrossFit
in a muted hip position, right?
And you would think that, but it's actually not. Your quads are extended, and you dig your elbows into your essentially belt if you can, and you push your hips forward, and that's the strongest position for the task at hand. And just like we talked about in the technique lecture, that is for sports specificity right there. But if you catch a clean with a muted hip position, you're in overextension, the load is behind you, you're asking for a back injury. So like for me, it's much more dangerous in catching a clean than light push presses. Like I feel like it's more of an efficiency, and I don't know if you guys agree, more of an efficiency in cycling jerks and push presses, more of a danger if we start getting into that heavier clean.
I don't know that it's efficient. I could see that it's. I would argue that it's less problematic, but I'd be hard pressed to jump on the. Yeah, it's not an. It's oh, you meaning it's an efficiency problem. Not
like it could be more efficient if we get rid of that.
Correct. I mean, it could. Yeah, I mean, that's obviously load dependent, but yes, I would largely agree with what you're saying, and then we would have to throw context on there for like who is this person, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But here's I think there's often a disconnect when people start looking at core to extremity. So, for example, the sumo deadlift high pull, right? When someone pulls early, a lot of times newer coaches will be they didn't hit hip extension, and I said no, they're standing tall at the end. It's a matter of did the hip extension is going to happen. Did it happen before the arms bent or after the arms bent?
So here's actually Cody, bring up the manual real quick. Let's do this. Let's graze through some of the photos and stuff in here, right? So that we can just about. So if you haven't read this, you should take it, or you should read it. Scroll down just a little bit. So if you've attended your level 1 or level 2, you've probably seen some variation of these diagrams. Scroll up just a little bit, Cody. Cody's broken.
Cody would have.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So not necessarily that overextension one, not these. Go back up to the original one.
Kanan's going to be at your summit this weekend, Andrew.
Yeah, a bunch of people are.
I had dreams of my intro.
Yeah. So this one right here. So like just understanding like this is kind of like the dummy's way of drawing the human, the skeletal structure so that it makes sense. And it's kind of like, for kids essentially. So you'll probably be, you should get familiar with this just to understand like where the mechanisms for hip hinge or flexion or extension happen, and then scroll down just a little bit, Cody, to those other photos. And then the other ones are based on flexion and extension. So if we're talking about anatomy, like with the extent of like where everybody should be, at least in my opinion, should be super honed in, and there's a couple of places, right? Flexion and extension, right? What you just referenced, Jay, which is core to extremity. And that's a sequence thing, right? But I still need to understand the anatomy of the body to do that. And then probably internal versus external rotation, right? If you could get really honed in on those three things, you could solve a lot of problems for people, right? When we're talking about anatomy and physiology, not necessarily physiology, but like anatomy, right? So when we're talking about nerding out on these, like you do need to know these things, because the number of people that Jay and Andrew, I'm sure that you guys have seen that said, muted hip when they meant lack of hip extension, or they said internal when they meant external, or sometimes they say flexion versus extension. Like those are things that are problematic. And if you're not super up to speed on that stuff, what will happen is you will say something that is incorrect. Somebody else will know that's incorrect. And now what I'm trying to teach and what I've just said don't match. And this becomes a teaching problem, right? So from a standpoint of understanding the nuances of these things, that's where I think that stuff is super important. The other thing that I think is important here is why the anatomy is super important is the simplicity of it, meaning like every position or everything that you're going to look at, if you think about movement in general, is one body part relative to another body part, right? So like pop quiz here. Jay, give me the squat stance.
Shoulder width.
Okay. What is shoulder width?
Feet underneath your shoulders.
So heels roughly shoulder width, right? Okay. So for thinking, so and
Did I
then
get that
Andrew,
wrong? I just get that wrong.
kind of like you would
Yeah,
if that was a multiple choice, you would have gotten it wrong because you would have chosen
All the above.
all the above. So then Andrew, for deadlift, what is the stance?
Feet under hips.
Right. So,
Heels.
like
Heels under hips.
right, or something between hip width and shoulder width, right? So like, damn it, do you guys know this information? I'm disappointed in both of you.
Is this part of the level?
This is part of the level 5. This is part of the level 5.
You gotta learn this stuff. I'm not kidding. It's important.
These are great. Those are. I mean, is he thinking?
We paid Cody a full-time wage just to do that.
Just to do
This is all he does.
these videos. But so this is where I think the stuff is valuable, because if you're not looking at the human body to say, where should their hands be? Where should their feet be? The question is relative to what?
Yeah.
Right. Right. That's how you start to make those decisions, which makes them, pretty easy. And so, Jay or Andrew, how many people have you seen go in the squat breakout and they have their squat stance where their heels are roughly hip width apart?
A lot. But I also try to tell them too, and this isn't to push back on the level 1. Some of the best flow masters I've ever worked with will say this is a blueprint, right? So it's points of performance. Now, I'm going to give you a blueprint of, I want your heels underneath your shoulders for the squat stance and your toes slightly out. But the last thing you want a client to say is, ouch, that hurts me. And I've had people leave CrossFit gyms because they felt too cornered. And I've pushed back on coaches when I'm like, the level 1 is fantastic. It's arguably one of the best things you can take. But if you're not adaptable to be able to recognize movement in regards to the points of performance, then you kind of got to, you got to go back, be like, wow, something doesn't look natural about that. And that, I think, goes back to this anatomy thing, right? Like a lot to your answer, so many people go right to their hips and it's too narrow. Majority of people, it's too narrow. But
I agree with your statement, and that stance is not hard and fast. It's a starting point that again, we've quasi references as like most cubed, most athletes, most of the time in most positions, right? It is a starting point that will get you damn close. Thank you, Nick.
Yep.
We will transfer that over to Andrew. But again,
Modi.
if you don't have
Modi's
that reference
talking.
point,
Who's Modi?
if you don't have that reference point, then you're going to be in trouble. The other thing that would be cool is just like talk a little bit about this, like set up positions for long-limbed athletes in the deadlift. Like, why would anatomy be important here, Andrew?
Yeah, so that's one, and that's what I did. Man, I tried to write an article on that with Long Kilgore stuff way back in the day. Like first times we were able to write an article. The hips are going to be higher because in regards to where the bar is, the femur is longer. So your hips need to be higher. And that's essentially the whole article. But if you,
I like it. It's succinct. It's to the point. This is great.
Yeah. That's it.
But so on that same note, you'll hear people be like, hey, in the deadlift, you want vertical shins. And I'm like, that depends on the anatomy of the athlete. If it's Jay, you could very well have vertical shins, right? He's 4'11",
4'9".
If you're
11 and a half.
Right. If you're Andrew Charlesworth, who's 6'3", very unlikely that you would have a vertical shin.
Absolutely. Why do you squat so high, Jason? Can we in that anatomy? I always have wondered, like, what is it that, like, do you like it? Like, is that comfortable for you? You love back squatting. You hate cardio. Why do you squat so wide? Because for your levers, it does not make any sense to me. The floor is yours.
Well, he does low bar, just for the record.
Okay.
I did high bar actually this morning. I did 3x15 at 225. It was part of CAP programming. When I wear my nobles, I squat more narrow. So I do think it has
just like
noble lifter. And I shouldn't say like they are nobles, but lifters. So I think it does have to do with my ankle mobility. Okay. So I go wider, probably to accommodate that. And when I'm wearing lifters, I would say I'm actually narrow, not even in my squat stance. I've had some back issues going on, and I do think it can be attributed to
your weight.
That was good. My squat form. I think I And I actually had an X-ray like a week ago that showed I'm crooked, and B, when I squat, I initiate a lot like by sending my butt back, and I think I'm putting a lot of pressure on my low back. So that's why I high barred today with the goal of going a little more straight up and down.
You should read the Knees Over Toes Guy book and then just do whatever he tells you to do and make that your new religion.
I checked out Knees Over Toes. Do you think that would help my low back?
No, that was like a joke. It was sarcastic.
You couldn't
like
taste the
he was all about it. He was like, "Oh yeah,
if it helps, like my back's been bugging me, so I was like, oh yeah, I will do whatever it takes to, if that helps. Right now, it's just a lot of edibles at night.
That we could talk about that for a second because
edibles. I'm an expert. I'm an elf boy when it comes to
that too. But go back to Jay, the Knees Over Toes guy, and then Andrew. Have you played around with any of his stuff?
I really like the I like his philosophy on lengthening the hips flexor through tension. Like his little on step on a thing and do a lunge, and he's really adamant about that. And I really think that would help. And then the that monkey foot thing where you put a dumbbell on your foot and build the hip flexor strength. I think a lot of people have back issues because of lack of hip flexor strength, and then they're like, "Oh, I can work that through the GHD," and it's hard. It's harder than just doing that.
I got those hip flexor in that context being what you're talking about, the psoas specifically, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So
CrossFit is giving away some equipment here in Colorado. I'm hoping to get a GHD.
Why? Or why are they giving away equipment?
Because they're closing down the office.
Where is it going?
To trainers in Colorado. They're not. There's no longer going to be an office, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's the thing. I actually have an extra one of these. I
have an unopened box in my gym right now because they sent me these and I've not used it yet.
And this is what? I can't see.
Do you hook a dumbbell?
Oh, never mind. Yeah.
So Andrew, you think I should stand tall and just do like knee?
You got to stand on a box, and you should be able to do a set of 20 with unbroken, and get your hip, get your knee. Let's see, where is it? That thing, the high knees. Yeah, right there. That thing just blows you up. I was doing it every day for a while. Then I would do a hamstring curl after, and my hip had never felt better. And then I just stopped because it's like.
Okay. If you don't have that, you can just use the mini bands, right? So just hook them around your toes, and then
I like it. I like the bands, but it's just a different type of tension. You don't.
Well, I'm just saying, if you don't want, it's increasing obviously as you go into further range of motion. But if you didn't want to buy one of those, you could do the poor man's version and probably use something in the gym that you already have.
He does those tibialis raises. I watched he's got an intro video with 3 drills, and I was doing it for a bit.
Up on the wall, right?
Yeah, you kind of switch your butt back against the wall. Yeah.
I don't think any of that stuff's bad. I just think in general, when somebody comes to me with all this new cool stuff, I'm like, nobody. Do you have a 10-minute plank? I always ask people, do you have a 10-minute plank? Because
how's your nutrition?
Chances are your core's weak, and that is just radiating out. Get a 10-minute plank, and then let's come back.
I also, being a firm believer in CrossFit, I'm like, if I have short amount of time, I do CrossFit. And then if I have additional time, sure, check out Knees Over Toes, check out monkey stuff, do your accessory work. But the foundation is am I doing constantly varied function? And if you're doing that, you are going to work a lot of this stuff. I mean, you're getting a full range of motion of the knee joint if we're squatting below parallel. I that's my foundation, and then I'll sprinkle in some of this other stuff.
Well, I think as a coach, that's your job, right? So your job is to be able to decipher what is this person looking for, what do they need, and what dosage do they need it. Do they need that at all, or is just that something that they're self-diagnosing off of PubMed, and they're like, I've got a QL issue, so I'm going to do all this stuff, and you're like, maybe, I don't know, but let's take a look at it. I know you squat like shit, so let's start there. And some of those things maybe, they might have some deficiencies in range of motion. They may have weaknesses in certain positions that just need to be addressed. So yes, I would agree. Biggest bang for your buck is training, but we shouldn't overlook the fact that they might need a little bit of prehab, rehab work on the side, but you know, I'm always a little skeptical when the whole training regimen turns into rehab, prehab. Now, there's definitely a spot for that. If you're pretty jacked up, then that's probably what you're gonna be doing for a while. There's a time and a place for it. But I think where you can add the biggest bang for your buck as a trainer is having, you know, at least a cursory knowledge of these things so that you can just be like, hey, cool, that is actually a useful tool. Here's what that is for. And here's about how much that you probably need for in order to get the, you know, some sort of utility out of that tool or exercise or position or whatever it might be.
That was well said. I think like you guys will like this. Man, I had a couple summers ago where I just had a bad chain of events happen. I had a jujitsu just nightmare injury, and then I went right into a one-wheel nightmare injury.
Oh yeah, you both have had bad one-wheel injuries.
And
I think it gave me cataracts. I'm not even kidding you. I went in like 2 years later, and he's like, "Have you had a head trauma?" And I was like, "No." And then I thought about it. I was like, "Oh wait, I have had a head trauma."
Dude, that thing is. Anyway, I did. Remember the A Better Warm Up, written by Glassman back in the day.
Great one.
So I did. It's called the CrossFit warm up, and I couldn't bring my hand over my head. I couldn't hang from a bar, and I was like, you know what? What if I do the CrossFit warm up every single day, and then I'm going to modify my workouts, but like I will use that as my rehab. And on day 97, I was officially good. Like I modified because of the CrossFit warm up, be 500 meter row, 10 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, GHD sit-up,
ring dips, right?
Yeah, or ring dips. Like you can go up or down, but hip extensions, GHD sit-ups, overhead squats with the PVC, and then the Samson stretch. And you did that 3 rounds.
Greg Amundsen wrote that, I believe.
Yeah, and so you could go up and go down. Like by the end, yeah, might be doing ring muscle-ups if you're, if you can grease the groove and make that like a skill that you can just walk into the gym at 6 a.m. and do, which is cool. But yeah, I remember by day 97, I was able to go back to like strict pull-ups, no pain, etc. And I did nothing different except those movements, which entail everything. And I would, just guessing based on what you told me, I would attribute that to movement quality without focus on intensity. Yeah.
Which I think everybody forgets. You can still execute that idea in the context of a class.
How? I believe you. I'm just saying how. I want people to know how.
Like you can just tell that athlete, be like, hey, this training session is for quality, right? Still going to be hard, but I'm not worried about you moving fast. I'm worried about you getting a good training session, but moving as well as possible, which means don't move fast, right? Because we know that threshold training will lead to errors and faults. So let's just avoid that. Let's move as well as humanly possible. And in a lot of instances, you can start to correct those things and then go back to intensity, because it's not like throw intensity out with the bathwater. It's just like understanding what this person's deficiency based on their anatomy or their injury or their circumstances or whatever, modifying the training appropriately in order to correct said problem, and then reintroducing intensity back into the equation at an appropriate rate moving forward so they can continue seeing results. Because there was a shift there in training. The shift was not for performance results. When we shifted to movement for quality, it was corrective in nature. There was an injury or something that we were dealing with. So we shifted the focus, but that doesn't mean that's now the new training protocol forever.
Right.
Eventually I want to go back to something that's like progressing me down the line and whatever it is that I'm chasing or whatever that looks like for me.
I know with our program, Jen writes, right, wrong, or different. She specifically writes, this is a competitive day. We call it a compete day. And then we have a few train days. And then we have a day that we kind of like to slow people down and have them pick their own endurance. It's not a routine. However,
I love that you do the 10 rounders every 3 minutes. Like,
yeah, like what Fern said, I want people to focus on quality, but I want them to know their gauges and intensity, really. Like I want them to understand, hey, this day I really need to lay it down. And I hate to say it, but we found with our community, it's just really once a week are people really laying it down. And then on the other few days, you're kind of seeing how you're feeling, see how you slept, see how your day was. And you have the option. Is today a day I'm laying it down, or is today a day I'm just going? Take, for example, today I was stressed to the gills, and that's when I'm going to get injured. That's when I'm going to walk into the gym and do something stupid. And
what your wife would tell you to do?
Go take a walk. Yes.
Take a walk. I want to talk about one more question before we go to a commercial. Why do we see the bounce clean so often these days versus hang power clean?
Huge bounce clean fan.
With a true hip hinge. Is
Big
that new?
bounce clean
And
Don't you have an Instagram handle like Bounce Man Bounce Clean or something like that?
He's the bounce clean king, is what he goes by, the BCK.
It's cycle time. It's cycle time and time under tension, right? But
pull that up, Cody. Please.
It's like what the actual clean. Does he have what it looks like?
He's got a video of you doing cleans. There you are in that gray tank. How to cycle barbell.
That's first of all, it's a red tank. Oh, the lady.
The lady. What do we got here? Turn that volume down so we don't get flagged. Yeah. It's choppy. Cody, Andrew, Cody lives in Alabama, so he's on.
They don't have internet. They don't have.
Alabama is a growing popularity for Airbnb. I'll have to hit him up.
I saw that new place you got.
Yeah, cool. See, like that, I don't love. That's like right there. You know,
that's almost a standard clean at that point. No.
Yeah.
So explain the difference of a bounce clean versus just your hang power clean to the listeners.
On the bounce clean, you keep your torso vertical. You wait till your arms get straight, and then you try to use the momentum of the barbell, like literally on the plates of the barbell, to bounce it off your quads vertical, and then you fastly whip your elbows under. So you don't in reality use a ton of hamstrings. You almost take out half of the movement, but it is so hard to teach and to understand that exactly what Fern said when we were offline. I run the class through a hang power clean warm up, and then let's say that's 85%, and then maybe I leave 10%. Hey, if you want to try the bounce clean, if it feels like, if you get it, do it if you like, but if you don't get it, don't try, because you will end up screwing yourself up. I tell them that straight up.
You're muted. Who is that?
It looks like Todd for a second, but it's not. But this is no. But that looks like it could be but this is the difference is like essentially hip flexion, right? Or this hip hinge position where you don't have it, where the bounce clean is that position right there as they work through. And it's an advanced technique, right? And it's largely used for competition. It's not great if you are trying to get really proficient at the clean. It is a technique to cycle the barbell at light to moderate loads really quickly. If we're doing something for said time, like that's what it's for. So while it's a technique, I don't think it's something that's optimal inside of the affiliate, right? It's not something you should be like teaching a progression for in your classes or anything like that. If you have people that have those aspirations, cool, you can get into that. But like you said, Andrew, at the point we start talking about the bounce clean, we're introducing other things into this equation, which are like, how athletic are you? Right. Like, can you string this together? Because that is going to be one of the number one factors in like making this happen. It's just like, are you an athlete? And for most people, it's just not something that's necessary. Again, not necessarily bad, because it absolutely mathematically can lead to more power output, which is like, okay, cool. If that's the goal, then knock yourself out. But even that, I would argue, should still be done with optimal technique with regard to that movement.
Yeah. I mean, you're taking so much like muscle hypertrophy out of the movement too. It's the same thing when you do like butterfly pull-ups with kipping. I mean, if you've ever done kipping pull-ups, like if you have a set of 50 butterfly pull-ups, but you're forced to do a kipping pull-up workout, you'll be absolutely roasted. I did that with Hobart once, and I was just like, dude, this is nuts.
So much more time under tension by just switching back. It's like double.
Yeah.
All right. Before we get to some of the concerns we should talk about with lordosis and kyphosis, we've got a testimonial from Dennis Lesniak, QDA in Buffalo, New York. If you follow our shows tomorrow on the progression, 3:30 Eastern time, Dennis will be coaching a class and I will be giving feedback. Let's hear from him and his experience with Affiliate U.
Hey guys, Fern here. Real quick, I just want to share a quick success story from one of the hundreds of gyms that we've been able to help inside of Affiliate U. And our mission and best hour of their day is to ultimately improve and grow the greater CrossFit community by building better boxes and creating better businesses with better coaching staff so we can bring CrossFit to the masses. Check it out. And if you think we can help you, don't hesitate to reach out.
One of my biggest wins working with Affiliate U was stepping back from constantly being in the business working versus being on the business working. You know, I was coaching all the classes, here all day, every day, doing everything. And it took me a long time to kind of loosen those reins. But in doing so, I've been better able to help more people because my impact is being better used on my team. And then when I am coaching classes, I'm coaching better classes. And that then shows my team more what we're looking for, and it makes everyone better.
That was awesome.
And we're back. Minus Jason Ackerman because he had to go pee. That's probably why this is happening.
I'm surprised he doesn't just go off camera.
Speaking of anatomy, Andrew, what would lead to a grown man who's not actually grown, a grown man who's like not actually full size, having the bladder size of a toddler?
You haven't got that checked out? Like this is.
I have detailed files on human anatomy.
I drink a lot of water. I don't think anything is wrong with me.
Yeah. Why do you need that much water?
I don't think it's good for your kidney.
I'm doing 75 hard. I got to drink.
No, you're not.
Oh my gosh, Jason, you
doing just the water part of 75 hard.
You're like,
it's not 75 hard.
75 hard. What's your one idol you told me the one time? The gym lunch dude, or which I have listened to some of his stuff. Mosey. Just if you can wave like a this is cool new shiny object in front of you, you'll just
Liver
go.
King. I like Liver King.
He's all natural, by the way.
Yeah.
I was wrong about that one. All right, let's get to number 4. What are some concerns we should be aware of as coaches with athletes who are lordotic or kyphotic?
I like what Jason said, what Fern said earlier. There comes a line where don't pretend like you can say that word to sound really smart and you can just fix it, or you should know. If they truly have issues, they need to be outsourced. Like, if their movements are so gross and they say they have no pain, then I guess we're going to make sure their loads are appropriate with, intensity. But
we should probably talk about what the difference between those two before we just start. Yeah.
Oh, look at it. Wow. This is amazing. This is unreal.
What is this drawing or the fact that Cody,
like Jason said, or Fern said,
Andrew just found out about the internet.
Well, we have so many things with this account rep role that like we're overloaded.
If you need someone to pull up clips and pictures, hire Cody. You have to pay him for 40 hours a week, and he works about 30 minutes.
Okay, so real quick, we'll unpack these pictures for anybody that's listening. So just the terms lordosis and kyphosis are not inherently bad, meaning like everybody has them, meaning like lordosis being the natural curvature of your lumbar spine and kyphosis being the natural curvature of your T-spine, right? So they're not good or bad, right? They just are. Now, if you have excessive lordosis or kyphosis, this could potentially be kyphotic. And this picture all the way to the right is scoliosis, which is curve in the wrong direction, meaning like left to right.
I had this conversation with the coaches development group yesterday, and I think something we talk about at the level 1 is your natural S curvature is what your back looks like. So if the person with kyphosis, lordosis, scoliosis is standing up tall at the bottom of their squat, I don't expect them to have a normal S curvature. I expect them to maintain their natural S curvature.
Yeah, like my wife Jen has one of the craziest scoliosis to the point where like they were considering putting her in a back brace when she was a kid. And I don't like, it is nuts. I've seen the x-rays. And we finally, when she was competitive in the regionals and everything, we were kind of worried, like, should you really be snatching 70-pound dumbbells? Like, you weigh 130 pounds and your back is completely an S. And we talked to a professional and they were like, oh, no big deal. Like, he was so relaxed. He's like, and he said a quote. He's like, gravity and essentially your just anatomy is smarter than anything else. Like, you've adapted over your life to make this inherently not dangerous. So don't worry, don't think about it, don't worry about it. And I was like, cool. Just leave it.
You're like, I like this guy.
So basically, not a big deal. Just
well, so like let's use just for reference here, right? So if we were to use this kind of what we would call excessive kyphosis, which I could probably definitely qualify for that. Like,
you think so?
I mean, maybe like if you look at my upper back, like it's pretty, like you can't see it in this picture, but like
Yeah.
I don't know, like it's curved, right? Where that's problematic, if we're talking about anatomy and physiology, if somebody did have, excessive kyphosis or curvature of their T-spine, like there's certain things that I could accidentally put them into less than advantageous positions, right? So if you're thinking about the front squat, not inherently being or loaded frontally is going to make it problematic. However, what you do with your hands will exacerbate the problem, right? So if I have somebody that has kyphosis that's excessive, and then I bring their hands inward, it's going to exacerbate that rounded back position. At which point, then I frontally load it, and now it's worse. So if you have somebody that's in that position, like in that kyphotic position right there, or kyphosis, I might need to think about like widening their hand placement in something like a front rack in order to create the widest bridge left to right, in order to try to flatten that out as much as possible so that loading doesn't make it worse. Now, that's not necessarily going to fix it, but just like something that could mitigate it, and then managed with load, obviously.
Yeah, and that you're going to have kyphotic people like myself, Fern, and now all these others, like this is like I could not get a front rack with like a wider grip if you paid me any sort of money. Like it's just, so it's probably good rehab for you to simply just try to hold the bar here. Like I'm already cramping up attempting to do this right now, because for me to front rack, I have to dig to even get the elbows up. So like there's no chance of
I used to be like that too. And then Phil, our weightlifting coach here, who there'll be a podcast coming out with him probably in the next several weeks. But like we were just working on just like how to manipulate my shoulders to create like a broad shelf in that front rack position versus here in this position. Like it's quite literally thinner left to right than it was if I just create a big chest in that position. And I was just like, oh, I didn't even know I was doing, and this is years ago, but drastically increase my ability to get heavy loads in the front rack position for a clean instead of looking like a wet taco.
A wet taco.
So let's keep it moving. Let's go on to the next question. Cody, see what I'm doing here? Cody?
He's doing it because he has nothing of value to add to the show, Cody. He's like, I might as well keep the timeline in check.
No, hey, you're a flow master. You know how boring the timeline is. Some people just aren't kinesthetically aware. What are your best tips and tricks for helping people develop that awareness? Ooh, that's a challenging one. What do you got, Andrew?
Dr. Andrew?
Yeah. So aren't kinesthetically aware of their positions in space. Are we talking a specific movement or posture?
In
just
general.
somebody who broadly falls in the motor moron category. Where just like, oh, you don't know how to move your limbs. This is going to be rough.
Isometrics, pauses, tempos, light loads. Even like that's when I bring up, elevate your heels on a plate, something like that. When somebody's like, I don't know what it's like to get my torso up. I'm like, I'm going to show you right now. And then you're going to hold that position. Then you're going to put a plate out in front of you. You're going to squeeze every muscle in your body. You're going to come up 1 inch. You're going to go back down 1 inch. You're going to come up 5 inches. You're going to go back down. You're going to marry that position, and you're going to not come off tension and sweat. Like I know Jason's really into stretching, and I was too. I actually almost ran the CrossFit stretching course at one point.
You almost ran that?
I took it with Ray, and then I was going to be like, dude, I'm passionate about this stuff. And what the biggest thing in there is people think that they need more stretching to get more mobile. It's very untrue. They need more time under tension with loading in proper positions. So they're like, essentially their brain can understand it's safe to be in that position. And then they'll be able to get in that position. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Something I say at just about every, level one during the front squat is, no amount of stretching or yoga is going to get you better at this front squat, but simply working through this position is going to get you there.
Yeah.
Well, we shouldn't poo-poo on stretching. Like stretching is important.
Oh yeah,
like you do need it, right?
You
and I would argue, I would push back, Jay. There is some amount of stretching that would help you in the front squat.
Yes, I agree. Like if you go to yoga, you will probably wind up better in the front squat, but it won't be as drastic, as quick safety, efficacy, efficiency, right? As
one without the other is not the solution. Is probably the fairest answer, right? Like you shouldn't train them you shouldn't stretch and hope it's going to fix it, and you shouldn't just load yourself and hope it's going to fix it. Like you should be doing them in conjunction.
For sure.
Fair enough.
And I think that's where like the knees over toes guy got all of his. He's getting all the results for these people. It's like you if you learn to do a Nordic, a Nordic raise, which is like that whole. If you don't know, just look it up. If you can do
like a quad, it's basically like a leg extension.
If your spine can flex under load and you're doing those, rounded back like deadlift thingies. I know there's
or a Jefferson curl or something.
Yeah, Jefferson curl, all that. Like you're probably going to be better off. That being said, you're probably not going to have as many tweaks. But like a guy Juji Mufu, he's a freak. And I read all his books, and he makes
how many books does he have?
Dude, he has a ton of books, and they are
really
awesome. Yeah. And one thing he says,
I feel uneducated now. I thought he was just like an Instagram guy.
Dude, he's real smart guy. And he'll tell you, like, look at joint rotations. He drafted me to another book, which was a Russian book, like translated. So it was kind of weird. But if you break your wrist in Russia and you don't have range of motion, they'll just sit there and tell you to twist it 2,000 times a day until you have range of motion. They're not wrong, right? They're not they're not wrong. So if your knee hurts, yeah, there he is. If your knee hurts, do a lot of, like knee rotations, do a lot of flexion and extension, and do it in deep positions, do it in, half range of motion. Like that's the way you're going to get better, is by moving the joint through the full ranges under tension a lot of times. But that Russian book was nuts.
What does it mean by functional movement generally weds the spine to the pelvis? And what do you say to people that will argue they need more twisting motion in their training?
Joe Westerland has a great answer for that.
What's his answer?
So I don't even know if that was a question. It was kind of missaid because it said functional movements weds of the spine. Like I didn't understand that, but is that
functional movements generally weds the spine to the pelvis, right? So
yeah, okay.
Most of the functional movements, yeah.
I misunderstood. So people say CrossFit doesn't have enough twisting. Let's go to the first part though. Functional movements typically start in your greatest position of power, which is going to be the spine and the natural S curve of the spine wedded to the pelvis. That's your strongest position to do anything from: run, jump, clean, backflip, whatever you're going to do. And then the next thing is the lack of twisting, or people say we need more twisting. That is actually, you're trying to teach anti-twisting. Like in reality, you want to learn to set up as optimal as you can in that position. Otherwise, that's where you end up hurting yourself. You end up hurting yourself in daily life when you accidentally twist with the laundry basket. You do. Like that's when those things happen. So if you never train it, like if you're just an average person at Walmart, you typically will just do, you're like, oh, it makes sense for me to twist and train. You're extra screwed. If you just would have worked a deadlift in a good position with the natural S curve of the spine, wedded to the pelvis, you would probably know that, oh, my brain probably doesn't think this is a good idea to twist this laundry basket. So it's like if you train, you're more than likely going to go to the spot you train under load versus doing something stupid.
That's what Joe says, or did you kind of throw that out there?
I mean, I haven't talked to him in a while, but it was something like that.
Shout out to Joe, just had a new baby boy, right?
No, baby girl.
Oh, is it a baby girl? He
Yeah.
had Cruz, now he's got a girl. Oh, that's weird. That changes. I told him he can name it after me. That changes things.
I mean, it doesn't really change it. It's just she's, not going to have a great life now.
So I like that because a lot of people will say, oh, you need to twist more. And what, Glassman used to say it. I worked with Ripito. He used to say it. It's like, well, if we can get you stronger with a stable spine wedded to the pelvis, when you do have to twist, you're far less likely to be injured because you're stronger, period.
Yeah.
So there's that. And then I like what you just kind of added to that, which is, well, if you twist in training, now you're more likely to twist in the real world, when in reality, that's not something you should be doing, especially under load, but consistently.
I think that whole discussion, it just lacks context, right? Because we would all, like, if given a little bit more context, probably agree. Rotational training right? Or sagittal or whatever. Like that is that when you're like, I'm in need of said thing, it is generally either due to probably some sort of significant injury or sports specific, right? The average person could just train almost exclusively in the frontal plane and they would be just fine rotationally. Not to say that it's not important, right? But my thing is just like rotational is just like, are you a throwing athlete? We should probably work some rotational strength, right? Like, are you a grappler? Are you BJJ? Like where rotation or being caught in a position where you're going to be twisted is probably something that is highly likely to happen in everyday training. Then this position now becomes a bit more important in your training. So I don't think it's like no rotational training or not. It's just like, hey, in the context of who this person is, do they just need a general program and we can forego a lot of the twisting for the most part and maybe throw it into some accessory work or warm up and you'd be just fine. But if you're talking about a baseball player, a hockey player, lacrosse player, do you need rotation? Yeah, that's called throwing. Yeah. Right? Like that you would probably benefit. A fighter punching, yes, you'd be hard pressed to convince me that having more rotational strength than throwing a punch is not going to be advantageous to you. Like that's a silly statement. So I think everybody just likes to fight about stupid shit. And this is one of them. And it's like rotation is important. Like you need to do it as a human being. If you have good strength and movement patterns moving inside of the frontal plane, you're probably just fine. And then if you're trying to be a sports specific athlete and pay your mortgage doing athletic things, yeah, you should probably throw some rotation in.
But even that, Fern, like I would even disagree. Not like I like the level 2 answer with sports specificity. Like do CrossFit, get really strong in the frontal plane and play your sport. That's going to be your best bet. Like you actually don't, I don't even think throwers need ridiculous amounts of extra volume of rotation. That's why their shoulders end up going like a baseball, they have all these injuries. I get you.
Oh, well, your statement there is correct. Ridiculous amounts is probably not something that I would agree with. I'd be like enough rotation.
Yeah. I want to see them more do like, I want to see more athletes do CrossFit and then go do their sport and be like, well, what do you do for training? I just do CrossFit. And then I play my sport. That's it. And that's why I'm the best.
The other thing is just like, if we're thinking about throwing specifically, if we think about the amount of trunk rotation that is actually happening in something like that, it's not that much. It's not excessive, right? Like you're not getting like full twist in those positions. I think it's just more of like, you should be strong in the frontal plane. You should be able to hold static positions or isometric positions through range of motion, which is kind of what we talk about. Like that's the importance of static positions, which is resisting the flexion, the extension, the rotation, but you're going to have those positions in sport. And then training them enough that they add value or power output to whatever your thing is. But if you get totally into rotation, you're probably lacking some other things, right? So it's like, it all goes back to what we teach in level 1 is like, how much of any one of these things do I need? Only enough that makes me better at what I'm trying to achieve.
Yep.
Well, and also you've talked about this before, Fern, like that sports specific training is probably better left served to your sports specific coach, right? We're here to get you GPP, fitter, etc., which we believe will translate to your sport. However, you have a throwing coach if you're baseball, you have a punching coach if you're a boxer, whatever. Like better leave that to the experts.
Well, another thing that should be thrown into that just sport specific stuff is like a lot of times what you'll see in rotational training are things that are like, I don't want to say heavy, but a little bit heavier maybe than they should be for rotational purposes. And then I'll just throw it out there. I don't want to make any assumptions. Like what kind of speed are we talking when people are training rotational movements?
Fast.
Well, no. Like how you see them training them fast? I typically see them training them slow, right? Like rotation.
Oh, really?
Movements. Yeah, typically. Right. So you're thinking like, unless you get somebody who's moving into like medicine ball tosses or something like that. So like,
that's kind of what, I was thinking like that, or like the landmine type stuff that's going on.
Yeah, but that's even slow compared to actual rotational movements inside of sport. Those are very, very fast and under low to no load, right? If I'm thinking about sport specific actions. So you have to think about like the load and the utility of because it doesn't always, just because I could move something heavy doesn't mean I can move it fast. Right? Yeah. In a lot of instances, it would actually be detrimental to your ability to do something quickly or rotate quickly or like be snappy in a movement. So we're getting into the nuances here. And that's why I think it's just like context, right? It's not an all or nothing. It's like, how much, what's the load, what's the frequency, what's the volume? Like, is it making this person better? Or do I just like to call myself the rotational guy because it's some sort of niche thing inside the fitness space?
Right. It makes me seem unique.
Guy.
Well, Cody, come on the screen. What else do we need to chat about?
What else do we need to chat about? I mean, I think you guys pretty much hit it.
Cody was taking a nap. He was.
I know. What's he doing today?
There for a minute. The main thing was getting to efficient communication between coach and athlete. Like, you guys all know this. A lot of coaches may know this, but in the manual, it's like, why does the layman need to know this, right? Like, why do my everyday members that walk into the door need to understand, and why do we need to have a common vernacular or communication as coach to athlete?
Yeah, and I think we made it pretty clear they don't, right? I think the whole point is, as a coach, it's important for you to understand how the body moves. It's important for you to, dig in and learn and expand your arsenal. But at the end of the day, your members just have to move well. And they don't have to know why they're moving well, how to move well. They just have to move well. And some members will want to learn more. Many members won't care.
Yeah,
All I got.
All right.